Oh man, I really hope we're recording. Okay, welcome back, Rollywood students. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're engaging in this video. It's good to have you back. Welcome back to our Wednesday night video. This strange week, strange season. This is, in fact, Passion Week. So the week leading up to Easter, and just as I mentioned, it is going to be weird. It's going to be so different. Easter this year is not going to be like anything we've experienced before. And I think it's easy to get down on a lot of those details, to be sad about, well, this isn't going to be the same as we've always done it. But don't be discouraged. I would say be encouraged. Don't waste this opportunity. I know every time I get in front of a camera, whether it's on Instagram, whether that's in front of you guys right now, I say don't waste your time. But I mean it, because what's going to happen, you guys are going to see when this is all said and done, whether that's a month, a few months, through the summer, through the fall. I don't know when this is going to be done, but when this is all said and done, the world is going to be different. Church is going to be different. Church will be done differently. So don't waste this opportunity to convene with the Lord. Don't waste this opportunity to seek Him through prayer, through the Word, through all of these things. Don't waste it. All right, so we've got a lot pushing forward. Things are going to be changing. We're going to wrap up a series. But before we get to that, I do need to make you aware of one thing. All right, some of you have Instagram, some of you don't. Some of you don't follow our Instagram account yet, but I've been advertising it for, I don't know, a year. If you don't follow it, you need to follow it. RRBC_student. Follow that account. On Mondays, we're going to be putting out a video. Every Monday, Manic Mondays. It's going to be a short 1 to 3 minute clip. It'll be goofy. Hopefully it'll provide some entertainment, but there's also going to be biblical truth kind of tucked away in there. So just be ready for that. All right, done with advertising. Now to finish our series. So, you might have noticed what's eating me. Maybe here. I'm being consumed by, I think, a shark. So if that gives you any hint as to where we're going to be in Scripture tonight, today, whenever you watch this, go ahead and turn there. And that book is Revelation, right. Okay, go ahead and turn to the book of Revelation. Just kidding. All right, in Jonah, absolutely, we're going to be turning to Jonah. So as you thumb through the Old Testament and you make your way to Jonah, I want you to be thinking about this. Who was it that first exposed you to the book of Jonah? Who first told you about this story? This is a really common story to learn young, to be taught early. This is fun to start up there with Daniel in the lion's den, Noah in the ark, these types of things. Who taught you about Jonah? I want you to think about it. Was it your parents? Maybe your parents taught you young, somebody in your family. Maybe it was Pastor Bill in Kidstown. Who knows? I don't know who it was. But this is what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to participate, to do something other than just watch a screen for a moment. You're going to have to pause. Not yet. Don't pause it yet. But in a minute, you're going to have to pause this video. And I want you to call if you can call them. Texting is lame. Don't text. If you can't call them, figure out how you can call them. If you have to resort to texting, that's like a C-. But we want you to call, okay? Call that person. Or maybe it's your parents. Maybe they're in the room with you. Maybe they're near you. Go to them and just thank them. Thank them for investing in you, in your spiritual well-being. Thank them for pouring into you. Because this is important. A lot of these truths, we're starting to find a lot of people, even things like Jonah and the big fish, people don't know the stories. And so think whoever it was that discipled you, that poured into you, that, okay? So here in a second, I'm going to say pause again, and you're going to pause the video, and you're going to go thank the person who has taught you this story, who you think first taught you this story. All right? Ready? Pause. Did you pause? I hope you paused. You better push pause. All right, if you didn't, you're just a sinner. All right, we'll keep going. Okay, so Jonah, you guys know the story. We'll pick up here. Hopefully that conversation was good. Hopefully it was encouraging to whoever it was that you did call and come in contact with. But we're going to summarize here the first few verses in Jonah, and then we're going to read from verse 7 down out of the first chapter. But the first, you know the story. God calls Jonah. He says, I need you to go preach to Nineveh. I need you to go preach to the Ninevites. They're wicked, their evil has come up to me, and they need to repent. So you need to go do that. And Jonah, of course, says, absolutely, Lord, I'm going to go do that. No. Jonah says, terrible idea. I'm going to go the opposite direction. So he goes to Joppa and finds a boat going out to Tarshish. So he gets on this boat. I'm going to go the opposite direction. God told me I'm trying to run away from the Lord. Well, that's going to work out really well for him. So he gets on the boat. The boat is about to set sail. They go out. They are sailing. The captain's there. Everyone's there. Everything's going well until God sends a storm. There's a mean storm that just appears. And the sailors are confused. They're throwing stuff off the boat. They're trying to make the boat lighter so they don't capsize, so they don't flip over. They're trying to survive. They're praying to all their gods. Maybe they have multiple gods, different gods, and they're reaching out to anybody they can. Help me, help us. We're going to drown. And then the captain remembers, oh, there's a dude down below deck. Let's go ask him to pray to his God. So they go down there, and they're like, Jonah, wake up. What are you doing? How are you asleep right now? How is this possible? We're about to die. It's storming. This is awful. We need you to do something. We need you to pray. We need you to get up. Right? And from there, we're going to read the story. So if you have your Bibles, go ahead, make your way to Jonah chapter 1. Like I said, I'm going to pick up reading in verse 7. And they said to one another, come, let us cast lots, that we may know on whose account this evil has come upon us. So they cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. And they said to him, tell us on whose account this evil has come upon us. What is your occupation? Where do you come from? What is your country? And of what people are you? And he said to them, I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. And the men were exceedingly afraid, and they said to him, what is it that you have done? For the men knew that he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord because he had told them. And they said to him, what shall we do to you that the sea might quiet down for us? For the sea grew more and more tempestuous. And he said to them, pick me up and hurl me into the sea, and then the sea will quiet down for you. For I know it is because of me that this great tempest has come upon you. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to get back to dry land, but they could not, for the sea grew more and more tempestuous against them. Therefore they called out to the Lord, O Lord, let us not perish for this man's life, and lay not on us innocent blood, for you, O Lord, have done as it pleased you. So they picked up Jonah, and they hurled him into the sea, and the sea ceased from its raging. And then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord, and they made vows. And the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. All right, so you guys know the story. They're bickering, and then they decide they're going to cast lots. So casting lots, a lot of times this was done in the Old Testament, some in the New Testament, mostly in the Old Testament. Casting lots could mean a variety of things. It was a way that the gods would determine whose fault it was. So it could be something as simple as drawing straws, rolling dice, different things like that. So they cast lots in whatever form. And there is some divine intervention here because the lot falls on Jonah. And they're like, so the lots say it's your fault, Jonah. Why is it your fault? What's going on? Who are you? What are you doing? They ask him a bunch of questions. Well, they should. So they ask him these questions, and he says, well, I'm a Hebrew. I worship the one true God, the God that created heaven, earth, the God that created the sea, the land. Yeah, that's the God I worship. And they're like, dude, you're trying to run from this guy? What did you think was going to happen? What do we do to fix this? And Jonah's like, well, the only option that I can see is that you pick me up and you throw me into the ocean, into the sea. They're like, oh, Jonah, that's very noble of you, but that's murder. We don't want to kill you. There's no way you're going to survive if we throw you in the sea right now. So we're going to try our best to row back to land. So they do. They try their hardest, but God continues to make the storm rage stronger and stronger, and they can't. They can't make it back. And so finally, the sailors go to God, and they say, okay, God, he told us to do this. We're going to throw him. Don't attack us for this. We're not murdering him. We don't want this to be held against us. We're just doing what he said. Please don't hold us liable for this. They throw Jonah into the ocean. Splash. He's in the ocean, and then everything calms down. And the sailors immediately understand that Yahweh is the one true God, and they worship. Right? They worship God. Now Jonah, on the other hand, splashing around in the water, gets eaten by a great fish. Now this to me is super exciting for 2 reasons. First reason, what did this fish look like? Okay, it's a little bit terrifying, but what did this fish look like? There's a lot of people, scholars, that say it could have been a whale. There's certain species of whale that could eat a person and they could stay and live in their mouth and their stomach for a while. Ugh, that's terrifying to me. The term here, at least in our English translation, is great fish. So God had appointed this fish. I think it was something special made for Jonah. Because God's sovereign over all creation, he just made this fish's purpose was to eat Jonah. And that's even more terrifying to me. But we don't know. The word there actually is just a generic word for an aquatic beast, an underwater animal. So I don't know what it was. I don't know what it ended up being. But either way, that's fun to think about. But the flip side, and the second reason that this intrigues me, is it's terrifying. So those of you that know me know I have the really irrational fear of being placed in the middle of the ocean, right? If somebody just took me out and dropped me in the middle of the ocean, I would die of panic, first of all. I would probably drown really quickly because I'm not the best swimmer. But thirdly, my mind would be my worst enemy. This is the fear of the unknown. What is underneath? I don't know. There's things brushing up against me, things hitting me. Who knows? There's terrible. It's horrifying. So you think about that. You guys are laughing at me. Well, maybe you guys have rational fears too. I don't know. You have weird things and things you're afraid of. What is it that you are afraid of? So here's another interactive part of our sermon this afternoon, this evening, this morning, whenever you're watching this. What are you afraid of? Say it out loud. All right, what are you afraid of? Clowns? Heights? Closed spaces? I don't know. Maybe it's being thrown in the middle of the ocean. But either way, there's fear there, and we recognize fear. Well, fear is what got Jonah in this in the first place. Right? Jonah was afraid to go to Nineveh. You know why? Because Nineveh, which is not far from Baghdad today, was Israel's enemy. They were hostile towards Israel. So he was afraid because he didn't want to be attacked. I don't want to go there. They don't like me. They're against me. Why would I go there? So there's fear there. He was also afraid he was going to be alone. Well, God, you're going to send me to an entire city of evil people who hate me, who hate us. I'm supposed to change their minds? I'm supposed to do all this by myself? No way. Nope. I can't do this by myself. And then thirdly, they weren't like him. He was going to preach to Gentiles. They weren't Jewish. He didn't know their backgrounds, didn't know their heritage. They had a much different upbringing. They looked different than him. Those people are different than me. I can't take God's message to them. No way. And so in Jonah's fear, his fear led him to disobedience. It led him to sin in all kinds of ways. First is disobedience. Right? First is, God, I'm not going to Nineveh. I don't want to do what you've asked me to do. Second is loneliness. Right? It's the fear of the idea that I'm alone. God, if you send me there by myself, I'm going to be all alone. Now obviously we know that he wouldn't have been alone, that God was with him. But you and I make that excuse all the time. God, you don't know how bad my team is. You don't know how bad my school is. You don't know how bad my family is. You don't know how bad my workplace is. How do you want me to radiate the gospel, to share the gospel in those places? It's just me. I'm alone. Those people, how in the world are they going to listen to me? We do that. We have that self-pity because we think that we're alone. When in reality, God's there. So there's that loneliness that he has. But then it causes him to sin through racism. I'm not going to those people. They look different than me. They don't like me. They're my enemy. They're mean. I don't understand them. Jonah is racist here. Right? There's things there. But the sad point of this whole story of Jonah is that it's way too familiar to us. It is exactly the modern Christianity that we're encompassed in, that we can't escape because the world is so scared. We're so boxed in fear. And you cannot be a believer who is obedient to God if your life is bound by fear. And let me explain to you like this. The first sermon that I ever preached was actually from the book of Jonah. It was Jonah chapter 1. Now, I didn't even preach about the fish, the cool part. I didn't even get to that. You think, what a waste of opportunity. Probably was. But in my mind, what I was doing was I was comparing my testimony to Jonah. I thought it was perfect. So a really quick version of my testimony. I grew up in the church. I knew I was a believer, and toward the end of my senior year in high school, I knew that God was calling me to the ministry. He wanted me to serve as a pastor. Well, I didn't want to do that. So for 2 years, a little over 2 years, I tried to do everything else I could to get away from that. I don't want to be a pastor. I don't want to do this. And eventually, God got my attention and pulled me back. Well, that's just like Jonah, right? Jonah ran from God. He didn't go to Nineveh. He went the exact opposite way. But God gets his attention and brings him back. Now, thankfully, God didn't send a giant fish to eat me. And he did get my attention. But I think I missed the point. There. You see, Jonah, I thought, resonated with me because my testimony was like him, right? God's calling on my life, I had run away from. God's direction for Jonah, he had literally run away from. So there's that connection. But I think what it really is, Jonah resonated with me, not because I was a pastor running from his call, but because I was a believer who was disobedient. And I think that's why Jonah encompasses a much bigger group of people. Jonah connects with all of us because we're all disobedient. See, so I wrote this down, and I want to say it correctly, so I'm going to read my notes here. But it says, Jonah is not just for the pastor who runs from the Lord. Rather, it's for the person who has experienced the grace of God and fails to tell others about it. All right, let me read that one more time. The story of Jonah is not just for the pastor who runs from the Lord. Rather, it's for the person who has experienced the grace of God but fails to tell it to other people. Now you think, okay, this is kind of getting a little bit harsh. Maybe. But think of it this way. Now, God hasn't called you to go to Nineveh and preach. Maybe he has, right? Maybe, I think it's about 200 miles outside of Baghdad. Maybe he's called you to Baghdad. I don't know. But for 99.9% of us, he's not called you to do that. But if you are a believer, he has called you to be faithful to the gospel. He's called you to go and make disciples. So when we look at that, are we being faithful believers? Are we really making disciples? Because every time that you withhold the gospel because of fear, you're being disobedient to God and you're sinning. See, this is the problem with, I think, a lot of modern churches, a lot of modern church mindsets, is that we think, well, I'm not doing all the bad stuff. I'm not going to those parties. I'm not lying to my parents. I'm not watching those things. Whatever it is, I'm not doing those things. But share the gospel? No. Live a life in a way that points people to Jesus? Some days, Wednesdays and Sundays maybe. We have these mindsets that certain sins are worse than others, that we can't get to God because, well, those people are wicked. They're evil. I'm better than them. But when we sit here in the church walls, which now we can't, maybe God's working on something here, but when we sit and we think we're better because we attend church or because we don't do certain sins, but we refuse to tell people about Jesus, we refuse to live a lifestyle that's pleasing to God, we're no better than them. We're sinning in the same way. And that's what this is getting. So if you're taking notes, I've got one truth, 1 point for you to write down. And that is this. Understand the gospel and its significance. Understand the gospel and its significance. See, Jonah didn't grasp the importance of going to Nineveh. If he had, he would have went. He didn't understand. See, Jonah's preaching, his sermons to that city is ultimately what turned them around, ultimately what pointed them to God. It changed their life. All of them, the whole city's life, it changed that. And that was all from Jonah doing what God had said. But he didn't realize how important that was going to be. The same thing for you and I. When we don't realize the people we come in contact every day, the people that we see, even now in quarantine, we have a great opportunity for this. But the people that we see, that see how we speak, that see how we act, see how we treat other people, that see how devoted we are to Christ or not, those things we have the ability to point people to Jesus every day. Even in quarantine, we have the ability to do that. So are your conversations, is your lifestyle, is it pointing people to Christ or is it not? Because what I find, and this is the sad truth, but for a lot of us, fear takes over. And when fear takes over, we kind of lose sight of Jesus. We lose sight of what's important. Now, I'm not saying the fear of a shark. I'm not saying the fear of heights. I'm saying that. I'm saying the fear of man. We're so worried about what other people think, what other people are going to think about us. We care so much about what other people think that we neglect what the God of all creation thinks for other people. Think about this now. If you're middle school, high school, you go against God because of what your friend tells you to do, because of what your boyfriend, what your girlfriend tells you to do, because you want to rebel against your parents, whatever it is. You are going against the God who created the universe, who created everything, because of a middle school opinion, because of a high school opinion. How insignificant is that? So we miss the point here. We refuse to talk to certain people because they're not cool enough, or we're too cool, or maybe they're too cool for us and we're scared to talk. We're scared to talk to our teams. We're scared to talk to our families, our workplaces, all these, because we don't know what they're going to think about us. But their opinion is worst case scenario. They make fun of you. They hate you, whatever it is. That pales in comparison to their eternal resting place, heaven or hell. That pales in comparison. But we refuse to share the gospel out of fear. So we're going to end fairly abruptly here, but this is what I want you guys to see. That fear shouldn't be there. It's going to be natural. It's going to always be in the back of your mind. Middle school, you're going to be worried about what middle schoolers think. High school, you'll be worried about high schoolers think. College, same thing. In the workforce, it's always going to be there, but it should not be the focus. Right? God should be the focus. Ask God tonight, now, whenever you're watching this video, to take that fear away from you, or to at least reveal to you the priority of the gospel. Make the gospel a priority. Make Jesus a priority in your life. All right? Listen, thank you guys for watching. Looking forward to making more videos through YouTube, through Instagram, through all kinds of means that you'll be able to see. But please don't waste this time. Take it seriously. We love you guys. We miss you guys. Until next time.